going on, Reef Builders? Evan Montgomery coming at you from my home in Dillon, Colorado, in my living room. We're here looking at my 92-gallon rimless reef tank. You guys have seen this before if you've tuned into the channel for a while, but there's been quite a few changes in that time. Obviously, things have grown in quite a bit. I've got some new corals, some old corals that I really want to show you guys. We're going to break it down in this video. We're going to talk about the equipment, do a deep dive into those corals. We're going to talk about the fish, some of my favorites. I got a few new fish as well. We'll show off kind of what's going on in the sump and what makes this system tick. Talk about maybe a little bit of the chemistry that's been going on in this tank recently and a couple issues that I've had with that. And just really do a deep dive, full tour of the system here and show you guys the entire thing. So thanks for tuning in for this one, and here we go. So the actual tank itself is a 92-gallon Cad Lights rimless all-glass aquarium, and it's 48 inches by about 20 inches by about 24 inches deep, roughly. And it's been a beast of a tank for me so far. I drove it back from Macna in San Diego in California all the way across the desert up here to the mountains, and so far so good. It's not been real susceptible to scratches or anything like that, and for a relatively lower end tank, I am actually kind of in love with it. So the next big upgrade that I made recently is the lid. These are from Clearview lids, and we have the same ones down at the studio, although they're not exactly the same. This has the acrylic rim all the way around the edge. It's like a solid piece of acrylic. The ones we have at the studio down there have like perforations in it to kind of let more airflow through and probably to make it a little bit lighter. But this, I kind of like this design better. It doesn't bow at all in the middle, and it's just nice and solid. I don't know if I think I took my lid off for the last update I did of my tank because it just was not the most beautiful thing in the world. And this is just a huge upgrade. When you walk up to the tank, it just looks so much better, and the fish aren't jumping out either. The light that I have over the tank is two XR30 Radeon Gen 4 Pros. They've been running for about 5 years, which seems like it'd be getting up there a little bit, but based on the coloration and growth of the corals, I think they're still almost as good as they were the day they came out of the box. Let's see, we've got the calcium reactor over here, which is kind of the heart of the system. You can't grow corals without the proper chemistry. You need that alkalinity and calcium right where it needs to be. I've got some magnesium chips thrown in this one here from Brightwell Aquatics, and that just keeps my chemistry right where it needs to be. It's a little bit on the low end right now because I do have so much coral growing in here. We might do something about that later today. That has been perfectly flawless. I actually upgraded the pump on there to the Versa recently from the stock Destaco peristaltic pump that it comes with, just mainly so that I was able to pump a little bit more water through the system, but also that Versa is just, it's hard to beat how quiet that thing is. One of the most important aspects in any reef aquarium is going to be the water flow, and you have to pay attention as the aquascape of the tank naturally changes over time as your corals grow to the positioning of your pumps and exactly what you've got going on. So for starters, on the left side over here, I've got one of the old style MP40s. I've been running that for 6 or 7 years nonstop, and it is still just as powerful as the day I took it out of the box, and that provides a lot of the main flow across the face of the reef. There's another MP40 on the back that brings water up from behind the rocks up into the front of the tank and kind of provides a cross flow, gets things moving a little bit more randomly. And the third MP40 is back on the back wall here, on the side wall, pointed across the back through a channel that I made in the aquascape so that it can really flush water from one side of the aquarium all the way behind the aquascape, all the way back to the other side, and it really gets that gyre flow moving around in kind of a circular pattern around the tank. And when I throw some food in there, that really helps to kind of disperse it as well. The last thing I got on here, just to kind of boost the flow a little bit more as a kind of accessory pump, is this Nero 5. And this has been a really interesting pump for me. I really like the way that it's been so easy to position around the tank. This is not the exact spot that I've had it the whole time. I kind of move it around as I feel like the tank needs more flow. But that thing moves quite a lot of water, and it's really quiet as well, which I like. But that thing is kind of fighting the vortex on the left and really creating that chaotic flow that we're looking for in a reef tank. All right, so the aspects we just talked about, the water flow and the lighting and the Destaco reactor for the water chemistry, those are all extremely important for a reef tank, but that would not be enough to make the corals grow like this and keep it all alive. You need some filtration in the system as well. So let's follow the water from the point where it exits the display tank and goes down into the sump and gets filtered. I have a little acrylic lid on the top, or polycarbonate lid on the top, just to keep algae from growing in there. The overflow teeth become gunked up with algae faster than you'd imagine with the light hitting it like that. So that's useful. There's a Durso drain pipe in there, stand pipe. Nothing too fancy, just the old school Durso. And then from there, it drains directly down into the Clarity filter roll. I've showed that off before. It's in need of a bit of a filter change right there, but it's got a bit of life left in it. That thing is just still been flawless, never had issues with it. Keeps the water nice and clean. Drains through that, and then it comes out into the skimmer section here where I've got one of the Max Spec Jump SK series protein skimmers. Picked that up 6 months or so ago, and it's been flawless as well. I have no complaints about that skimmer whatsoever. You can see there, that's just a couple days worth of nice dark skim mate, and I can't believe it's pulling all that out of this system that looks so clean. But from there, it goes over into this section. I've got a few loose pieces of live rock that are just kind of hanging out, not doing much. And in front of that, I've got the Avast Marine calc stirrer. I try to keep that charged up with fresh calc as often as I can. That's fed by the Camor dosing pump, the old Bluetooth one. And that also, as far as dosing pumps go, I've never had any issues with that. Kicks on about twice an hour and feeds calc into the system. Passes through the baffles over into the return section. I've got 2 heaters, which is always a good idea, especially up here in colder climates, to have a backup. Not even in case one fails, but in case one can't keep up, or in case one does fail, it's not going to cook your tank. But even so, I've got those both plugged into the Cobalt Neostat little temperature controllers, which just, it's an added layer of safety that just lets me sleep a little more soundly at night. I've got the M1 return pump from Ecotech. I've had that running for, gosh, pretty much since they came out. It's been 5 or 6 years at least, and take that out to clean it every now and then, and it is just flawless as well. Got the Toonsy Osmolator automatic top off that's fed from a reservoir over here to my left. Keeps the water level right where it needs to be, on top of, in addition to what the calc reactor puts in there. Follow the water up the pipe here. The tube, or the pipe going off to the right, goes to a frag tank. And then it comes up to a manifold, which I'm not using as much anymore. I've got a carbon reactor that I put carbon in every now and then, maybe every 2 months I'll run carbon just to kind of polish things up. I used to have a algae scrubber hooked up down here. I had a feeling that might have been depleting the trace elements a little bit. I was running it really long hours too. I might not have been using it. It had it tuned in just right. So I removed that, got a little extra space down here and simplified things just a bit. But that's about it. I've got actually, I've got the Bubble Magus dosing pump back there for just a little extra supplementation. I've always been a huge fan of B-Ionic, and I think that they mix that up with some trace elements and just the right recipe that I've always had great success with.
Where do you keep your chemistry at?
Chemistry, I shoot for about 8 on the DKH. It's usually more about 6 these days, but I've never had bad things happen with lower alkalinity. I've had bad things happen with higher alkalinity. So I always aim a little bit lower. Magnesium is up, I keep that about 1500, elevated a little bit because I've got the all the Montipora in here, and they kind of like that extra magnesium juice. Calcium is usually about 400 to 450 is the target range that I shoot for, and that's not too hard to get up. If that's low, I'll kind of just manually dose some in there, and that keeps it up pretty much where it needs to be for a while. I do dose some iodine in here, a couple drops every couple days or something like that. All right, let's talk about some corals. I've got a pretty good assortment here between branching corals and plating corals and a few encrusters tucked in between there as well. Quite happy with the selection that I've got at the moment and the way that they're all kind of growing together in a certain kind of way. It looks pretty natural if you ask me. Let's start. I've got this plating Echinopora, Hollywood Stunner, Sprung Stunner, whatever you want to call it up there. That's just grown in 6 months to a year from a little quarter-sized piece. Got the Space Invader Pectinia hiding out down there. I've got the Montipora hispida, nice brown base with the bright green polyps right up front. That's encrusting on the glass a little bit more than I like. I don't typically let corals do that for very long. Got a nice Squamosa clam down here that have grown. It's probably triple in size since I got it about 2 years ago. The little frag I've got here of the Walt Disney Acro, that's finally starting to wake up for me. It just sat here as a little green nub for a year or two. It's finally starting to wake up quite a bit. Got the classic Langsai cap, the Montipora capricornis, with that nice purple rim, and that's just a classic. It's getting a little large in here. I've only had it for, well, I guess since I set this tank up, so about 1.5 years, and that's the growth from 1.5 years right there. Got a red digi up in the back where the clownfish kind of like to hang out. It's being encroached on by quite a few green star polyps there, but they seem to be coexisting acceptably. Let's go back down towards the bottom. I've got a few random frags. Kodama Acro, a Duncan that's being shaded out. This Palau Estrella is a pretty cool one. Jake got that for me. The Montipora stellata here, the tub stellata, has grown more than I could have imagined. There's actually one of those large tiles underneath there somewhere. The classic red Monty cap is one of my favorites. That thing, it's one of my favorites just kind of how fast it grows, and you can go in there and break pieces off, and a couple weeks later you can't even tell. I'm gonna probably do that soon because it's shading out a couple of my favorites down there. I've had this strain of Montipora for so long too. That's kind of why I keep it around. That's one of the original corals that I got when I set up my reef tank back in the day. Let's see. Jedi Mind Trick Monty down here is really nice. That thing's also encroaching on some space for some other corals. Gonna have to do something about that soon. The purple Milka Stylo here is pretty hard to miss. That grew from just a couple inches, like a little frag, about 1.5 years ago as well. So that thing, I'd like to trim it a little more often, but the skeleton is so dense, it's kind of hard to get in there and do it without breaking other things around it. A couple of these acros here I've had for a really long time. I think this is a Miyagi, and then this is some other tort that I've just kind of grown from frags, you know, repeatedly as I move my tank over the years. Got Acropora austera, I think it's the worldwide yellow tip. And that is kind of taken over the entire center section of this tank, as you can see there. So as much as I'm in love with a lot of the corals that I have in here, there's a few what I would really consider to be borderline pests. You see all the pulsing xenia that I've got growing up on the back. You wouldn't believe how fast that appeared from the time I put it in there not terribly long ago. And that is kind of popping up all over the place. You can see some here, all down in this corner. It's popping up with xenia. It's beneficial to the tank if you can keep it under control. It might do a little bit of nutrient uptake, but it's really hard to keep it keep it at that level unless you've got it isolated on its own rock or something like that. There's some green pallies that are also kind of pest-like. These guys over here are not impossible to get rid of, but they're pretty hard to keep under control. And you know, when it's just a few of them, they look pretty nice, but when it starts to overtake the rest of your corals, they start not to look so nice after a little while. The Milka Stylo honestly is almost a pest. It's a beautiful coral, but it probably consumes as much alkalinity as everything else in this tank combined. And as beautiful as it is, it does kind of tend to take over and start shading things out. And like I mentioned, the green star polyps here at the bottom of the Monty Digi that I've got here. It's easier to remove than most pest corals, but it still kind of just does its own thing and gets out of control. So this yellow tang right here is really, I consider to be probably my biggest pet fish. He's been part of the family for a number of years, probably 6 or 7 years now. And I put this nori clip in here hoping he'd come out, and it works every time. He gets a little bit of that rod's food too, so he's got that nice orange tint on his pectoral fins, and just a healthy specimen. Especially these days, it's hard to underappreciate a yellow tang. Another one of my favorites, been a part of the family for a long time, is this Mandarin. He just has so much personality, cruises around the tank, killing as many copepods as he can. He's not shy at all. One of the more active fish in the tank is this orangeback fairy wrasse. Also had him as part of the fish family in here for many years. I couldn't imagine the tank without him. He's just a beautiful fish, adds so much character to the tank. Also that regal angelfish you see right there, believe it or not, I found him at Petco. That was one of the biggest scores. I couldn't believe it when I saw those in there. I jumped right at the opportunity, got him for a good price, and he's just a stunning fish. Lots of personality, and knock on wood, so far it has not given me any problems with my corals. Got this pair of longfin clownfish from Sea and Reef Aquaculture. I've had them a year or so as well. They've got lots of personality. They still haven't really found anything to host in. They kind of just hang out back by the digi. But I love they kind of remind me almost of like a betta fish. They're like a hybrid between a clownfish and a betta almost. And it always catches people's eye when they come over. That's one of the first fish that people notice when they walk up to the tank. Starry Blenny is also one of the most personality-loaded fish that I have in the tank. This is actually a female, and she becomes gravid about every month to 6 weeks and lays a big clutch of eggs somewhere in the tank and viciously defends them from the other fish for a few days until something inevitably eats them or they kind of just float away, since I don't have a male in here to fertilize her eggs. Got a tail spot blenny that I picked up recently. Also one of my favorite fish. Blennies just have so much personality. It's hard not to love those guys. There's a flame hawk fish in here, hiding out somewhere in the rocks. I've got one lonely old pajama cardinal that kind of lost all his mates over the years that's still hanging out. Got a coral banded shrimp in here. It was a pair actually until fairly recently. One of the, I think it was obviously either the male or the female, I'm not sure which one, passed away. I've had them for a really long time though, so I'm guessing that was probably just an old age related thing. There's a royal grandma hiding out somewhere in here. I haven't seen him yet today, but he's randomly friendly. He'll come out and say hello. So one of the things that I really attribute to keeping this tank successful in the long run is keeping a really close eye on all the parameters and the chemistry overall. You know, I don't do a whole lot of fine tests or ICP tests for trace nutrients and stuff like that, but just the big three, keeping alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, just right where they need to be, and salinity obviously is also extremely important. Keeping those right where they need to be long term, plotting, you know, writing down all of your parameters so that you can keep track over time of your trends and keeping things right where they need to be. I'd say that is one of the most important things in keeping a tank healthy, on top of, you know, unfortunately things do die occasionally, and you know, if you let them sit in there, it kind of just keeps the whole tank stagnant and not doing well. If you take dead corals out and replace them with something living and just kind of keep the tank with good energy going in there, I think that kind of helps a lot in the overall success of a tank as well. My aquascape is kind of one of the things I wish I could change about this tank. It wasn't as much of an issue initially, but if I could set it up again, I would definitely not put the purple stylo on this side of the tank. I would put it more back in the back left corner of the tank, just so that when you walk into the room, you have more of a slope towards the back. The way it is right now, you have to kind of stick your head around the side of the tank to get the best view, in my opinion. And I kind of feel like it's backwards in certain ways. And for keeping the flow moving as well, there's certain corals that are positioned in a way where I really wish that they weren't. They're just kind of blocking things and hiding a lot of prime real estate where I could have other corals. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little wrap-up tour of my aquarium here. It's been long overdue. I think it's been about a year since you guys last saw it. We're gonna probably go in here before too long and change a few things, frag up a lot of these big Monty caps, really open space up, allow the tank to breathe again, get light down to some of these frags and stuff that's on the bottom of the tank, and really just kind of open things up. So this tank might not look the same next time you guys see it. Hopefully not, actually. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this tour of my home reef as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. This is kind of my pride and joy. This is what I spend most of my time when I'm at home doing, and having a view of these beautiful corals really helps me keep me inspired and motivated in this hobby. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this one. Don't forget to post some comments down below. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll be keeping my eye on those. Don't forget to subscribe, like the channel, hit that notification bell so you stay up to date, and we'll talk to you guys on the next one. Peace.